Hi, welcome back if you are watching this again and if you've seen a few of my other videos, and if not, welcome. My name's Anna. I am living in Scotland currently, and I think this is probably like one of my early videos, so please bear with me. Just to give you some content and some background, I have very recently kind of come on to the video scene, really as sort of a video diary and accountability journal into the journey that I'm currently going on more than anything. A few months ago I sadly was hit with some mental health problems that kind of came out of nowhere for me. It was a very, well, to me anyway, a really big kind of epiphany moment, and you know, from there I had to take some time out. I've been taking some time out of my work and to really just regroup and find out kind of what I'm doing with myself, how I'm feeling mentally, and getting back on track. This has something that has never happened to me before. I've always been a worker. I have a beautiful family, a lovely home, and you know, I was just kind of going on in my life, just dondering along when this all hit, and I think it's really like knocked me. So what I decided to do was I made a few videos to document my mental health journey, and that kind of then led into whether or not they should be shared, and that also then led into this channel and documenting kind of how I'm coming out of like my bit of my dark hole. So the first video which I released was kind of like a hi, this is me video, so if you just want to go back and watch that, you can. It kind of gives you a bit more of a sense of where I am and where I'm at. This video is kind of the follow on from that and is kind of starting to hit on some of the outside merits of my life that I'm looking into. I have either been working on, or I'm currently working on, or actually started to work on and have now come back, just because they're really important, and it's something that I really want to build on. And it's also something as well that mentally is very important. It needs to be taken into consideration. So in this video I really want to go into finances, money. Let's talk money. As someone who lives in Scotland and, you know, originally English, it is not something that the British are renowned to do. We very tight upper lip, you know, very silent about money, and we don't really discuss it. I think that this is complete rubbish, and that should change. It should be an open, honest conversation, and I think a lot of the inequalities in the world over finances, wages, money are all because people are too embarrassed to talk about it. So I really just want this to be an open, honest place where we can just lay it all on the table. No judgment, and really if we can learn from each other, get some hints and tips from each other, that's great. I also as well want to use this kind of as a starting video of finances, our history of our finances, go a bit of an overview of what we are and some of the differences that me and my husband have in our finances. And then what I'll maybe do at a later date, if people want to hear about it, is the strategies we use, the things we have in place that work for us, or the things we're trying, because it evolves. Money evolves, and how you handle money, how you think of money, how you work with money, that is always evolving too. So yeah, no, that's kind of where we're at. So that's just a little quick deep dive into this second video, and you know, kind of going back on the first. If you are looking at this and you're like, oh, you talk about your mental health at the beginning, but I can't see any mental health videos. Again, as I kind of put on my first video, that's still something that I'm debating about is whether or not to upload the videos of my mental health journey. They're very raw. I think I'm going to, though. I'm going to do it. Half of the battle that I'm facing is that I am then going to need to watch them, and I've still not watched them back. But I am in such a better place mentally, and I know it's part of the healing process for me to go back and watch them, but it's just a very big thing and a very sensitive thing for me. So yeah, it will happen. They will get uploaded, basically. In the first video, I'm like, do you want to see that? Do you not? But I still haven't posted that first video yet, because I was a bit like, I'm gonna maybe do a couple of videos and then get them out one after the other. And I still think I'm going to do that, although I'm still really scared about posting videos. It's opening yourself up, so I'm trying to get over that hurdle as well. You'll also find as well with the videos that you're watching of me at the moment is that they're unedited. I'm probably repeating myself a lot, saying and, oh, a lot. This is something I might work on in the future, but at the moment this is a diary. This is an open space where I want to be able to reflect and talk to people about how I'm feeling, find a like-minded community who can then help me in return. This isn't anything other than that, and therefore why I would go in and edit my videos at the moment just seems a bit redundant, you know. It does mean that my videos are maybe going to be a bit longer, but fundamentally at the moment there's no reason for me to be going in and worrying about cutting down the content, because it is more of, like I say, a diary. So with all that, let's get into finances. So everything I discuss will obviously mean, because I am Scottish based, it will be in pounds, no dollars or anything like that, because I'm UK based. But certainly most of the things you can apply either way, because you're just really having a discussion about finances. A bit of my background, I grew up in a one-parent family holding. So when I was growing up, money was, not because of that necessarily, but it was a very, very tight topic. It was something that either wasn't discussed at all, or when it was discussed in a very, very negative way, i.e. we don't have it, there is no money, you know, you just have to kind of get on with it. It was a negative, I would say, growing up experience, because I think that, you know, even maybe when you're poor or you don't have that sort of affluence, or you're living under the poverty line, there is a way you can still go about, you know, about discussing money. For example, it was never discussed in my household that, you know, you could try and get passive income, you could invest, you know, retirement. These things were never discussed, and certainly not like they are now. And I just wasn't aware of them growing up. So I was always very much like, you worked, the more you made, the richer you were, the more things you could have. The less you made, the less you could have. And that was it. There was there was nothing outside of those parameters, those boxes. So I was always sort of taught that to go into debt wasn't great, it was bad, which I guess was actually a good positive thing, but that if you were poor, you just went without. So for me, a trigger of mine growing up, and it's something that actually has always been a trigger right up until very recently, has always been the sense of security. One of my biggest fears has been to end up where I don't have enough coming in, that I am homeless, that I am on the streets, or, you know, that I can't afford to provide for my children. And that meant, for me, I always needed an income source. So I have always worked. I was in a situation where a family member of mine owned a shop when I was younger. So pretty much from the age of 13 right up, I've worked. Right up until this period in my life, actually, I have worked. And I'm in my 30s now. And that's what I would do, you know. Sometimes after school, I would go home from school. I'd do a 5 till 9 shift. In the evenings, then the shop shut, and usually at the weekend, what started as working maybe 1 day a week for 4 or 5 hours turned into me working full day shifts over the course of the weekend. And I did that right up until that shop shut, which was when I was 18. I was going into uni then, so I got a spare job while I was at uni. I worked all throughout uni. And after that, I then went travelling. I worked while I was travelling. I did a couple of odd jobs while I was travelling. I travelled for about 8 months. I went to New Zealand with my husband. We came back, and then I was unemployed for about 2 or 3 months. That's the longest I've ever been unemployed. And then after that, I went into the workplace, and I have worked since then as well. And that's full-time jobs. I've done that. And my husband's been the same. He had it differently in the sense of he didn't work until he did a couple of odd jobs before and during uni. I think they were more like work experiences, but he actually didn't get a job until after he left uni. He works with computers and software engineering, so he ended up doing his degree, and then it took him about 6 months to a year to actually get a job in his field. He was really lucky. He did end up getting a job in his field before he gave that up, and he has worked full-time ever since then as well. So we are a working family, and my mum worked all her life. My father, before he passed away, worked all his life as well, and my brother's always a worker. So we've always been workers. When I left uni and we went travelling, my husband proposed, and so we came back as a newly engaged couple, and that was really when debt started to actually become a radar on my equation. I was never taught, and neither was my husband, about credit cards, about debt, about even finances of cars and things like that. Taking out finance, we had up until that point never had that come on the scene. And so when I came back, I was obviously offered a credit card from when my student account was closed and I was in full-time employment. And it went very, very quickly from a £2,000 credit card allowance to a £5,000 credit card allowance. And for someone who was planning a wedding, this was amazing. I was just like, yes. We stayed with my husband's parents for a little bit, and then we rented a flat. So we were renting a flat. We were both working full time. My husband got a credit card. I got a credit card, and that we kind of just did what any normal couple in their 20s would do. Everything kind of went on the credit card when it ran out on the main. All our bills were paid first. That was fine. Food, and then anything else went on the credit card. And so a lot of our money, our wedding, was paid on our credit card. And like most people, I started the wedding process with a list of all I'm going to do, and it's going to tally up. I think my wedding was meant to be about 8 to 10 grand. I had decided. Where that money came from, I don't know, but that's what was in my head. And it ended up probably being more closer to about £12,000 or £13,000 that was spent on the wedding. And we didn't have a luxury wedding, I wouldn't say, by any means. We didn't have anything luxurious, anything out there. It was just a bog standard wedding. But things, especially when you add the W word in front of it, it just builds up, and it just seems to add zeros. So yeah, all said and done, roughly, averagely, that's probably about how much we spent. So by the time we got married, which was about a year and a half later, we, and I will say actually as a side note, we did put our honeymoon on that. So there we go, a honeymoon to Florida, so was all included in that. I owed full £5,000 on my credit card. My husband owed a couple on his. We then, after that, moved back in with his parents for about just shy of 10 months, saved up and got a house. So then we got the house as well. And so really you're talking about probably about 7-8 grand's worth of debt. And we spent a good year. a good 10 months actually. The 10 months we spent staying at his mum and dad's house, we pretty much paid off most of the 7 grand that we had in debt. We cleared my credit card, we cleared my husband's credit card. We then started to build up. We roughly got about 8 to 9 grand saved for our down deposit, for our deposit for our house. We then found a house we really liked, and we were loaned another 7 grand from a relative for the rest of that, which was seen as a gift. We did pay that back. So once we moved into our new home, we paid that off, paid them back. So that was another year. And yeah, then what we've done since is we've not been necessarily in debt, but we've flitted our money away. We've not put anything aside. Again, no retirement. I automatically had retirement with my work, but that was fine. No investments, nothing like that. And then, so we were going about doing that until I fell pregnant in 2019. We then realised we needed a new car. So we then went and got our first ever car on finance. Before that, we'd had cheap runarounds, and our first car on finance, and that was about 10 grand. And then I discovered Dave Ramsey, and that opened my life up. So Dave Ramsey, if you've not heard of him, go and look him up. He's really good for finances. He basically does the 7 baby steps of getting out of debt and setting up long-lasting finance for financial freedom. While I don't agree with everything that he set up and does, well, I agree with it all, but while I do agree with it, there are some differences, and I think every person's situation is different. So while we follow it, the general gist, there are some slight differences in how we do that. Fundamentally, though, we realised we had got this car on finance. We shouldn't have really done that. So we spent the year, my son was born in January 2020, and we spent the year of 2020 paying the car off. The car got paid. In that time, my husband paid off the last of his student loans. I still have an outstanding student loan of £3,000, but I can get into that and why we've not necessarily paid that off. Predominantly, though, the main reason was I fell pregnant again. Our son was born in the January. We then went into COVID lockdown. Throughout COVID lockdown, we were paying all the car off, came back, started back at work again. We paid the car off in, I believe, January of 2021. And then by April time, I was pregnant with our second child. So then what we started to do was we started to haul our money together. And that's what he says. He says, when you're pregnant, stop what you're paying and then start to kind of hoard money and get a bit of a hoard behind you in case there's any medical expenses. Now that's obviously more American based. In the UK, we have free healthcare, so you don't need to worry about medical costs and expenses. Also as well, our student loans repayment and structure of it, and just in general, our student loan system is a lot better. Really, unless you pay or get paid, or your parents get paid over a certain amount, your education is free. So that's what we've been doing since. We've kind of been holding money since I've been pregnant and putting that to the side, kind of as a mini emergency fund. And what will probably happen is after our child is born, well, I say what will probably happen, what will happen is we will go on to build up a more secure, solid emergency fund and pay that £3,000 off, and then that will be it done. It shows you how quickly life flitters away, though. In the space of 10 years, we've paid off so much debt, like probably, about 27 grand to 30 grand of debt, things we're paying off, and flitted a lot of money away in the long term. We're now over in our 30s, and it's only now we're like, maybe we should get an emergency fund built in. But that's what we're doing. And the big thing about that as well, and what Dave Ramsey sort of brought in, is the idea of goals. My husband and I are, the main reason that we're now kind of in this situation is because we started to discuss our finances openly. merged them. So I've always been really bad for seeing it as his money and my money. My husband makes substantially more than me. He makes, it's probably easy to say 20 grand more than I make. So I was always very much like, well, that's your money, you work, you earn that, that's yours, and then this is mine. Whereas he is very much, my husband's always seen them as, it's our money, it's our pot. And so it's only really been the last 2 to 3 years I've started to kind of move away from my old kind of sense and being like, right, this is our pot of money. And once you get onto that same grounding where it's both of yours, it's one big pot of money, everything's in there, it makes it so much easier, because then you can be like, well, actually this much can go onto bills, all of this can go into savings, it's not yours, it's not mine, it's ours, which is fundamentally what your mortgage and that is anyway. It's a shared bill. So by merging them together, it's really, really helped. The goals, like I say, we now have goals in place for what we want, especially since having children and the fact that we have another on the way. We have to be smarter with our money, and we have to think about what we want our children to grow up, not just with what they have, you know, if they want a toy, if they can have it or not, but also as well with the attitude we want them to have on money. You know, I don't want my child to grow up with such a negative connotation on money like I had, but I do want them to be aware of credit cards. I want them to be aware of, you know, money isn't free. You usually have to work and give up your time for it, which actually is your most important commodity. And also as well, on the opposite spectrum, I don't want them to grow up spoiled with the expectation that things are going to be given to them because mum and dad will pay for it. I don't want that at all. So these are conversations that we had never had, which we're having now. And I think that's why it's so important, you know, and to have those discussions, and why it's always changing and adapting, and how easy it is as well just to forget about it. Like, fundamentally, if the bills are being paid, you've got enough money to go out drinking at the weekend if that's what you do social wise, or go to the play park and you can afford to get in. You know, if you're not living the paycheck to paycheck, it's very, very easy just to kind of let it go by, you know. And that's it. We are very, very lucky we're not living to paycheck to paycheck, but we could be better. And that's what we're doing now. That's what we're looking into now. We're looking at how to be better and how to be smarter with our money. You can earn a lot of money but not be smart with it. So that's what we're looking to do. So fundamentally, as I mentioned, the first thing was having the same shared goals. Secondly, it was seeing it as our pot of money, and having it that way. We're also working because my husband and I see money very differently. As I said at the beginning, my husband is a natural saver. I'm not a natural spender, but I like every pound. I like every pound to be accounted for. My husband is naturally a saver. What that means though, he doesn't actually, the best way to explain it is, his money goes into the bank account, his bills come out. He couldn't tell you when his bills come out, how much comes out each month. He just knows that what goes in exceeds what comes out. So at the end of every month, he usually ends up having a little pile of money left over. Sometimes he spends it, sometimes he doesn't. But fundamentally for him, he just likes that buffer at the end of every month. Whereas I'm very much like, I want every pound accounted for. So I know by the third, fourth day in any given month where every single pound is going. He, on the other hand, doesn't have a clue, but because he's a natural saver, he knows that he's going to have a buffer usually at the end of the month. And he feels uncomfortable. Like, by the end of the month, my account usually ends with zeros. At the end of his month, it's got £200 or £300 in it. And if it goes below that, he becomes very uncomfortable with it. So we are working on ways now where we can accommodate that, because that's two different budgeting styles right there. He doesn't like the every pound out, you know, even if he knows that includes play money for him. It means he can spend money here, he doesn't like the numbers dropping. Like, he doesn't like, that's the one thing he doesn't like, is to see at the end of the month that number drop below a certain point. So he doesn't care about the rest of it, as long as the bills and that are being paid, but that makes him uncomfortable. Whereas for me, I'm like, that's fine, I know my bills have been paid, I know I've got play money here, I know I can do this, I know it's gone there. Like, for me, it's fine. I know everything's fine. So I don't mind if my account says 0 at the end of it. But for him, he doesn't like that. And that's something we have to work on. And that's something that we have to then communicate about as well. So it's about learning what budgeting styles, what systems, what conversations work for you as well. And you know, what that means and what that's giving us is not just the financial freedom or the smarter way of things, but it's actually as well giving us independence with our money, which we've never had before. So an example of this is I was at a hen party a few months ago. The bill came to the table, and the person who was meant to be, we had agreed initially that the bill would be paid and then it would be tallied up at a later date and everyone assigned how much they owed. And the person who was meant to be paying it forgot their card. They forgot the credit card that had like the amount of money on it, and it was about £200-300 bill, basically, food bill. So panic awashed, because she was a bit like, I don't have my card, oh my goodness, this is the only card I've got. And I stepped in and was like, that's fine, I'll get it and we can work it out. And there's no rush on the money having to come back to me. There's no panic on the money coming back to me or anything like that. I was just simply like, I'll get it.